Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly through time to a night scented with jasmine and damp stone, somewhere deep inside the beating heart of ancient China. Lanterns tremble in the courtyard breeze. Beyond the carved wooden doors, you hear the soft rhythm of silk being drawn across a loom. Someone's still working, even though the hour is far too late for any sane person. The light glows gold, the air hums, and you can almost taste the mixture of candle smoke and mulberry leaves. You're standing in the imperial weaving chamber, and somewhere inside this room, a single dress is about to change the fate of an entire dynasty. You probably won't survive this one if you're allergic to political drama, or really expensive fabric. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge quietly across the polished tiles, careful not to disturb the shadows. The palace feels half asleep. Crickets outside chirp in rhythm with the gentle wooden knock of the loom. The air smells faintly of steamed rice and oil lamps. Inside the weaving chamber, a dozen women bend over frames strung with silk so fine it gleams like moonlight. Their hands move like ghosts, swift, precise, hypnotic. And in the far corner, a girl barely older than 16 works alone. Her name, at least the one people will remember, is Leon. Leon isn't supposed to be working at this hour, but the Empress's new gown must be finished before the festival of the double moon. Rumor says it will be the most magnificent dress ever woven, so luminous it could blind the gods. Each thread of silk is soaked in chrysanthemum extract to keep its sheen. And into the hem, they say, the Empress has ordered a secret blessing to be stitched, characters so small they can only be read under candlelight. You crouch beside Leon and watch her hands dance. She hums a melody, one you half recognize, something about a river spirit who steals the color from dawn. Every pull of the thread seems alive, every shimmer a heartbeat. If silk has a soul, an old proverb goes, it lies in the hands that weave it. But there's something different about Leon tonight. She keeps glancing toward the door, biting her lip as though afraid of being caught. Her lamp is brighter than regulation allows. The air feels heavy, like a storm waiting behind the walls. Outside, somewhere in the maze of corridors, a eunuch's sandals slap against stone. The faint jangle of keys echoes, then fades. Leanne exhales, her hands trembling slightly. She adjusts the shuttle and threads in one more color, a strand not approved for imperial use. It's red, not the dull court crimson of official robes, but the deep, almost living red of fresh lacquer. Historians still argue whether she did this on purpose or out of artistic impulse. But that single thread, bright, defiant, invisible to most eyes, will one day be blamed for the collapse of a dynasty. The imperial looms were sacred places. You couldn't even sneeze inside without a supervisor's permission. Every inch of silk was registered, weighed and sealed with the emperor's insignia. To tamper with it was like rewriting scripture. Yet here she is, weaving rebellion one hair-thin line at a time. You lean closer. Her eyes are dark and steady. The candlelight paints her face gold. Her lashes trembling. She whispers to herself, not a prayer, but a name. You don't catch it, but it sounds like someone she loved, someone lost. Maybe a soldier, maybe a ghost. Outside, the night stretches on. The palace roofs gleam under moonlight like sleeping dragons. Somewhere a caged nightingale sings in its sleep, and still, Leon weaves. The next morning, the chief overseer finds her slumped over the loom, her fingers locked around the shuttle. She's asleep or pretending to be. The dress is nearly done, folded carefully over an ivory stand. Even unfinished, it looks unreal. The silk seems to breathe. Colors ripple as though the fabric holds moving water inside it. Who gave permission for this shade? The overseer barks, pointing at the faint blush of red running through the hem. Lean lifts her head slowly. Her hair has come loose, framing her face in stray black strands. "It must have been the light, honored sir," she murmurs. "It will fade when dry," the overseer grunts. He doesn't believe her, but he also doesn't have the courage to contradict beauty that might already have the Empress's blessing. So he makes a note in his ledger. Thread inconsistency, possibly natural dye, and moves on. That one line in that dusty book will one day become a clue historians argue over for centuries. Because weeks later, when the Empress finally wears the dress, the red thread will catch the torchlight in a way no dye ever should. Courtiers will murmur. Priests will panic. One poet will swear he saw the silk pulse like living skin. But for now, none of that has happened. The workshop hums on, and Leon pretends she's just another weaver. In her heart, though, she knows she's made something dangerous, something alive. By sunset, she's summoned to deliver the finished garment to the inner court. Her hands tremble as she folds the dress into a silk-lined chest. The corridor stretches endlessly ahead of her, flanked by carved phoenixes and dragon motifs. The air smells faintly of incense and powdered jade. You can almost hear her heartbeat echo between the columns. At the gates of the Empress's quarters, guards bow. She's just a servant, but they all glance at the chest with thinly veiled awe. "Careful," one whispers. "That's the dress that will make her immortal." You almost laugh. Immortal isn't quite the word history will use. The doors close behind her with a soft thud, and Leon steps into the golden glow of the Empress's chamber. The air here is heavy with magnolia and power. A silk screen divides the room, shadows flickering behind it. A voice smooth as lacquer says, "Come closer." Leon kneels, presenting the chest. "Your Majesty," she whispers. The screen slides aside, and you finally glimpse her, the Empress of 1,000 poems. Pale, sharp-eyed, young yet timeless. Her robe gleams like frozen sunlight. She studies the dress in silence. Then she smiles. "It's perfect," she says. "Even the flaw makes it human." Historians still argue what she meant by that. Some think she saw the red thread and admired its boldness. Others believe she sensed something darker, an omen sewn into silk. Whatever it was, she ordered the dress to be worn during the upcoming festival, and that single decision would ripple outward like a dropped stone in a still lake. As Leon backs away, her forehead nearly touching the floor, the Empress runs her fingers along the fabric's edge. For a moment, her eyes darken as though she feels a pulse beneath her touch. She frowns, then laughs softly. "Strange," she murmurs. "It's warm." Outside, the palace bells begin to ring. Midnight, signaling another shift in the Empire's endless rhythm. Leanne returns to her small dormitory, her hands still tingling from the thread. She dreams of rivers that bleed red under moonlight. And you, standing there at the threshold of history, realize a single line of silk has already begun to unravel a kingdom. The next morning dawns soft and pale, the kind of sunrise that makes the palace roofs look like they're gilded in honey. You wander through the courtyard with the others, servants, gardeners, guards, each wrapped in that dreamlike calm that hangs before the day's chaos. The festival of the double moon is only 3 days away, and everything feels on edge. You catch sight of Leon again. She's standing by the lotus pond, her reflection rippling in the green water. She's dressed simply, but her fingers still bear faint red stains from the silk dye. The rumor's already spreading. The Empress herself requested her presence in the inner chambers. For most people, that's an honor. For a court artisan, it's also a gamble that can cost your head. The Empress, people whisper, was born beneath an unlucky star, a woman said to bring prosperity and ruin in equal measure. And now she's chosen to wear Leon's creation for the most sacred ceremony of the year. You can almost feel the empire holding its breath. In the silk workshop, chatter hums like bees. Someone jokes that Leon's golden thread has bought her eternal favor. Someone else mutters that no good comes from attracting the Empress's attention. The older women cross themselves in quiet superstition, touching their spindles 3 times to ward off misfortune. Historians still argue whether Leon was chosen purely for her skill or because someone, perhaps a rival, had already whispered her name into the Empress's ear. In the Forbidden City, after all, nothing happens by accident. By midday, a messenger arrives. He carries a summons sealed with the imperial chrysanthemum. "Leon of the Southern Loom," he announces. "The Empress requests your attendance. You follow her through endless corridors. The floors gleam with inlaid jade. The walls breathe dragons. The light shifts as she walks, gold deepening into amber. You can hear her heartbeat again. Steady, but nervous, like the pulse of a trapped bird. The Empress is waiting in the Hall of Still Waters, a private chamber reserved for meditation and strategy. It's cooler here, scented with sandalwood and lotus ash. She sits behind a carved screen, her face reflected in a bronze mirror. "So," the Empress begins, her voice lilting, calm. "You are the one who made the dress." "Yes, Your Majesty," Leon murmurs, bowing so deeply her forehead grazes the floor. "Do you know," the Empress continues, tracing her reflection with one finger, "that this silk came from the imperial groves outside Suzhou? They say the worms were fed only mulberry leaves touched by morning dew. It is said such silk sings under moonlight." Leon hesitates. "I did not know that, Your Majesty." "Of course not." The Empress smiles faintly. "Commoners are not told the songs of silk." You almost think she's mocking her, but there's a softness to her tone. The Empress rises and steps forward. Her robe whispers against the marble floor. "Your hands," she says, "they are steady." "Yes, Your Majesty." "Good. Then you will assist in preparing the garment for the festival." "You will not leave my service until it is done." It sounds like an honor, but you can see Leon's pulse jump in her throat. Once you enter the Empress's household, you don't simply walk out again. Later, while arranging the gown across a polished lacquer stand, Leon notices something she hadn't before. A faint shimmer in the thread, almost alive. It glows briefly, then fades. She brushes her fingers over it, and for a heartbeat, she swears it hums. She laughs quietly, chalking it up to exhaustion. But a nearby maid gasps. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" "The whisper," the maid says, her eyes wide. "It sounded like words. You tell yourself it's imagination. Silk doesn't whisper, but deep down, something uneasy coils inside you." That night, Leon lies awake in her narrow bed. Outside, the cicadas buzz like static. Somewhere in the distance, she hears the Empress's private musicians rehearsing for the upcoming festival. Flutes, drums, and the haunting pluck of the guqin. She closes her eyes, but the melody feels wrong somehow, off-key, like a lament disguised as a love song. Historians still argue whether any real whispering silk ever existed. Some claim the strange hum was a natural vibration of tightly woven fibers. Others insist it was a trick of candlelight and tired ears. But a few fringe scholars, those charming weirdos we secretly love, believe the silk was dyed with compounds used for coded communication. Certain dyes, they argue, could change hue under different light, revealing hidden patterns to trained eyes. If that's true, then Leon's little red thread wasn't just art, it might have been a message. The next day, While Leon adjusts the gown for the final fitting, the Empress suddenly asks, "Tell me, girl, what do you think this dress says about me?" Leon freezes. It's a trap and she knows it. "It says," she replies carefully, "that your majesty is radiant beyond measure." The Empress tilts her head, amused. "Flattery is silk's cheapest dye," she murmurs. Then more quietly, "It says I am both adored and watched." "Don't you think?" You can feel Leon's panic. I would not presume, your majesty." The Empress studies her face, then laughs softly. "Relax, I like honesty, and your hands don't tremble even when your words do. That's rare." That night, Leon eats alone in a corner of the servants' quarters. A guard brings her a dish of rice and steamed lotus root. He sets it down and says nothing, but when he turns to leave, he slips a folded scrap of silk under the bowl. She unfolds it. 3 characters are painted in watery ink. They know. Careful. Her heart drops. She looks around. Everyone seems normal, chatting, laughing, chewing quietly. Who sent the note? Who are they? She tucks it into her sleeve. You follow her back to the weaving chamber. The moon spills through the latticed windows, washing the room in silver light. She sits by her old loom, running her fingers along the wooden frame as if it were a friend. And then, almost unconsciously, she begins to weave again. Not for the Empress this time. Not for beauty or duty. For herself, she threads the shuttle, hums the old river spirit song, and starts stitching a message of her own. Historians still argue whether Leon ever sent a coded warning. One modern historian once said, or if the silk simply became a mirror for the Empire's paranoia. By dawn, a thin strip of cloth lies across her lap, crimson, luminous, delicate. You can barely see the words she's woven into it, but they glimmer faintly under the first light of day. The dress will speak. The stars will fall. When the festival begins, those words will echo louder than any trumpet. The day of the festival arrives in a haze of gold dust and thunder drums. You stand among the palace courtyards as servants rush like bees, scattering petals and incense smoke into the air. The banners ripple above you, crimson, jade, and ivory, colors so rich they seem to hum. Every corridor smells of sandalwood and roasted duck. The whole empire has been waiting for this moment. The Empress's grand appearance is hours away, yet the gossip is already louder than the music. Ministers whisper of omens, scholars mutter about shifting stars, and somewhere in the servants' quarters, a cook swears he saw the reflection of a dragon in his soup. And at the center of it all, locked inside a silk chest lined with perfumed cedar, lies the dress that started it all. You catch Leon's face among the attendants. Her expression is unreadable, her posture calm. But you can see her eyes darting toward the chest as if she half expects it to move on its own. She shouldn't even be here. Weavers are supposed to disappear once their work is done, like ghosts after sunrise. But the Empress requested her presence again. To make final adjustments, she said. Yet the way she smiled when she said it felt less like gratitude and more like curiosity, as if she wanted to see how a moth behaves while standing before the flame. The Empress's dressing chamber glows with 100 candles. Mirrors imported from Persia catch every flicker of light, multiplying her reflection into infinity. She stands before them in her underrobes, her maids kneeling like petals around her. When Leon enters, the air shifts. "Bring it," the Empress commands. The chest is opened. A hush falls over the room. The gown looks alive. No, not merely woven, but breathing. The silk seems to ripple as if a soft wind passes through it, even though the room is still. The colors? White, pale jade, and that single thread of forbidden red blend in hypnotic motion. You swear you hear something faint, like a sigh trapped inside fabric. The Empress steps forward, fingertips grazing the silk. "It's lighter than I imagined," she murmurs. "Your Majesty," says one of her attendants, "this is the rarest silk in the Empire. It should weigh no more than a whisper." "Then may I be the whisper that ends wars," she replies with a wry smile. The maids lift the gown over her shoulders. The fabric settles against her skin like dew, and when she turns toward the mirror, even you have to catch your breath. She's radiant, otherworldly. The candlelight dances over her form, and for a heartbeat you swear she looks less like a woman and more like something divine. The room seems to hush itself, and then faintly, from somewhere deep in the silk's weave, a sound, a hum, low and rhythmic, like a heartbeat echoing through the cloth. The Empress freezes. "Did you hear that?" Everyone nods, but says nothing. A single drop of wax falls from a candle and lands on the floor, the only noise in the world. Then the Empress laughs. "It sings," she says softly. "My dress sings to me." Historians still argue whether that sound was real. Some say the Empress was hearing her own pulse reflected through the dense weave. Others claim the silk was treated with resin that responded to heat, tightening the fibers and creating a faint vibration. But a few fringe theories, always the fun ones, insist that coded voices were somehow embedded in the dye pattern itself, like an ancient form of micro-writing. Either way, what happens next cements the legend. The imperial banquet begins at dusk. You follow her through the corridors of the Hall of Supreme Harmony, a place so vast it swallows sound. Torches line the walls, their flames painting the marble in flickering gold. Hundreds of nobles fill the room, officials, poets, generals, concubines, all waiting to see the Empress's gown. The Emperor himself sits beneath a canopy of dragon silk, his expression caught somewhere between awe and boredom. When the Empress enters, conversation stops mid-sentence. Every eye turns. Every fan lowers. The silk catches the torchlight, and that faint red thread along the hem glows like embers under ash. She glides forward, each step deliberate, her expression serene. You can almost feel the ripple of collective breath moving across the hall. The music begins again, but something's wrong. A musician falters on the guqin, and the discordant note slices through the silence. The Empress's eyes flick toward him, a look so sharp it could peel lacquer. The man bows his head and resumes playing, but the air has shifted. Then, from one corner of the hall, a scholar rises. His name is Han Xiang, an advisor known for his inconvenient honesty. He bows deeply and speaks, his voice trembling but clear. "Your Majesty," he says, "may I be so bold as to ask, what blessing has been woven into your garment tonight?" A ripple moves through the crowd. The Empress tilts her head, amused. "Why ask what all can see?" Anxiang hesitates. "Because the heavens send warnings, not compliments, and I fear what glows may also burn. It's a dangerous line." The room holds its breath. The Emperor frowns but stays silent. The Empress smiles sweetly. "Then, Scholar Han, should I remove it and see if the stars dim in protest?" Nervous laughter sweeps the hall. The scholar bows again, mutters something about unworthy curiosity, and sits, but the damage is done. The question has been spoken aloud. The courtiers begin whispering. The priests exchange anxious glances. Some claim the dress's red thread symbolizes rebellion. Others insist it represents divine favor from the goddess of silk herself. Historians still argue about that night. Some accounts say the silk's hue shifted under torchlight, turning from red to black for just a moment. Others say a strange heat rose from the gown, wilting the petals of nearby flowers. And a few surviving scrolls claim the Empress's reflection in the mirror behind her blinked when she didn't. You try to tell yourself it's all superstition, yet when you look at Lian standing frozen by the wall, her face drained of color, you realize she's thinking the same thing you are. Whatever that silk is, it's not finished revealing its secret. As the banquet continues, the tension thickens like syrup. Laughter feels forced, conversations shallow. The Empress sits perfectly still, her expression unreadable, and when the Emperor raises his cup for a toast, she joins him with the faintest smirk, as if she knows something he doesn't. Later, when the guests depart and the candles gutter low, Lian sneaks one last look at the Empress. The silk still shimmers faintly, even in darkness. She could swear it's breathing slower now, matching the rhythm of the Empress's heart. And that's when she realizes, with an icy twist of dread, that the message she wove into her secret cloth, "The dress will speak, the stars will fall," might not have been metaphor after all. The banquet stretches late into the night, long past the hour when the palace usually sleeps. The air is thick with the scent of plum wine and roasted chestnuts, and the torches along the walls burn low, sending trails of smoke curling into the vaulted ceiling. You find yourself drifting through the crowd, watching the Empress from a distance. Her laughter glides like music, but her eyes never quite match her smile. The dress glows faintly beneath the shifting firelight, and every now and then a faint pulse of crimson flickers along the hem. You can feel it in your chest. The whole empire seems to be holding its breath. The Emperor sits slouched upon his throne, his face flushed with drink. He's not an unkind man, but he is a tired one. Too many wars, too many whispers. Tonight was meant to be a celebration of renewal, yet the air hums with something uneasy. Even the musicians seem to know it. Their rhythm trembles, uncertain. Then quietly, one of the imperial astrologers approaches the dais. His robes are embroidered with constellations, his beard trembling like a spider's web. "Your Majesty," he murmurs, bowing so low his forehead brushes the marble floor, "a strange omen has appeared in the southern sky. A red star flickering above the horizon." The Emperor waves him off, grumbling. "The heavens are full of lights. Let them flicker." But the Empress lifts her head sharply. "Red, you say?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Red as burning silk, the words hang there like smoke. You watch her fingers twitch against her gown. The silk seems to react, subtle but unmistakable, as though it recognizes its twin above. Historians still argue whether there truly was a red comet that night. Some astronomers suggest it might have been a rare supernova visible from the east. Others dismiss it entirely, claiming the red star was a later embellishment meant to give legend poetic symmetry. But the records are clear on one point. Something happened that night that made even the bravest courtiers keep their eyes low. At first, it's just a whisper, someone near the banquet tables murmuring a prayer. Then slowly the whisper grows. A noblewoman faints, her jeweled hairpin clattering to the floor. Servants freeze mid-motion, and then, in the stillness, a faint rustle rises. It's the Empress's gown. The silk moves, though she hasn't stirred, the folds rippling as if caught in a breeze that no one else can feel. The red thread at the hem brightens, glowing like molten gold. The Empress stiffens. "Who touched me?" she demands. No one answers. You can almost taste the tension. Like metal, like thunder before the rain. The emperor rises, anger flaring. "Enough of this," he snaps. End the festivities. Everyone out. The crowd scatters, grateful for an excuse to flee. The guards close the hall's great bronze doors with a boom that echoes through the corridors. Only a few remain. The empress, the emperor, 2 guards, a trembling servant with a candle, and Leon, who had been standing by the far wall, unnoticed until now. "Come here," the empress says suddenly. Her voice is soft, dangerous. "You." The weaver. Leon kneels. Her knees hit marble so hard it must hurt, but she doesn't wince. "Your Majesty, you made this gown. What did you weave into it?" Leon shakes her head. "Nothing, Your Majesty. Only silk, as ordered." "Don't lie to me," the emperor snorts, impatient. "A dress can't conjure spirits, wife. You've been listening to too many old tales." The empress's eyes narrow. "Then explain this." She lifts the hem slightly. The red thread shimmers once more, and there, faint but visible, letters. Characters woven so fine they can only be seen in the reflection of firelight. The emperor squints. What does it say? The empress doesn't answer. She just stares at the words, her lips moving as she reads silently. Her expression changes. First confusion, then disbelief, then something sharper, colder. Finally, she whispers, "It says, 'The phoenix shall fall to the serpent.'" You feel the air shift again. The emperor's eyes darken. "Who dares write such treason?" he hisses. The empress turns her gaze toward Leon. The girl's mouth opens, but no sound comes out. Historians still argue whether those words were truly seen on the gown or if panic simply filled in the blanks. But the effect was immediate. The guard sees Leon, her loom calluses digging into their arms as she struggled. "Wait!" she cries. "It's not what it means!" "Silence," the emperor commands. "You've cursed the throne with hidden words." Leon tries again.
"Your Majesty, it's not a curse, it's a warning."
But her voice breaks under the echo of boots and shouted orders. The empress steps closer, silk brushing against the stone. Her face is pale but composed. "Let her speak," she says quietly. The emperor hesitates, then gestures impatiently. "Fine, speak then, girl. Tell us how you came to weave my doom." Leon looks up, tears streaking down her cheeks. "The dye, it wasn't mine. The red thread came from the south loom, not ours. I thought it strange, but the overseer said the empress herself requested it. I only wove what was given." The room falls silent. The empress frowns. "I never requested such thread." And suddenly, everything feels like a trap. The emperor's anger sharpens into suspicion. "Who did?" Leon trembles. "I don't know. The order came with the imperial seal." You can almost hear the gears of court politics grinding to life, slow and deadly. The empress turns toward her husband. "Someone forged my seal." The emperor's voice drops, low and dangerous. "Someone seeks to turn us against each other. Or to reveal something we refuse to see," she murmurs. Historians still argue what happened next. Some say the silk began to darken, as though swallowing the torchlight. Others claim the red letters crawled higher, forming new words none dared read. A few palace accounts, half-burned, water-damaged, and obviously censored, say the empress fainted as the gown constricted around her like a living thing. Whatever the truth, the banquet ended in chaos. Leon was dragged away to the lower cells. The empress was carried to her chambers, feverish and silent. The emperor ordered the dress locked away, and by morning the entire palace buzzed with fear. Servants whispered that the gown had been cursed by jealous spirits. Scholars speculated about encoded prophecies, and one lonely historian centuries later would write, "That night marked the first unraveling of the dynasty's thread. You watch as Leon, shackled and pale, disappears down the corridor." She glances back once, her eyes finding the faint red shimmer of silk still lying on the floor. It almost looks alive, twitching like a heartbeat left behind. And above the palace, somewhere beyond the clouds, the red star still burns. You wake up to the thick smell of incense and the faint clang of a distant gong. It's early morning in the Forbidden City again, and you're following the same servants through polished courtyards. Only now the air feels heavy, expectant. The silk dress you watched dazzle the hall last night has become the spark for a fire no one can quite see yet. The Empress hasn't smiled since that banquet, and rumor says one of her attendants was found whispering to the wrong minister before dawn. You wander past a stone wall, painted with dragons, symbols of imperial strength, and spot groups of eunuchs moving quickly, their silk slippers silent on the marble floor. They're carrying scrolls, locked chests, and something else. Gossip. Always gossip. The court runs on it like bees on honey. Someone claims the golden embroidery on the Empress's dress contains hidden words only the Grand Historian could read. Someone else swears the silk came from a forbidden southern region, touched by rebellion. And still another says the Empress herself wept that morning, clutching the dress, demanding to know who betrayed her. You pause under the carved eaves, feeling a faint tremor in the ground. Not an earthquake, just tension, the kind that makes everyone in the palace stand a little straighter and talk a little quieter. Historians still argue whether the dress itself contained a secret code, or if the Empress simply believed it did. But one thing's clear. The whisper of treason had begun to spread faster than perfume through silk. By mid-afternoon, the Hall of Supreme Harmony becomes a hive of accusation. Ministers kneel, voices shaking, while the Emperor sits above them like a stone carving. He's wearing robes heavy with gold thread, robes that now seem dull compared to the infamous gown that hangs nearby on a lacquered stand. You notice it there, draped elegantly, the light catching the threads like sunlight on still water. A few courtiers can't stop glancing at it, as though afraid the fabric itself might blink. And then a quiet thing happens. The Emperor asks one question, just one. Who approved this design? Silence falls. Even the crickets seem to stop mid-note. The girl, the weaver, steps forward from behind a curtain. Her face is pale, eyes calm, like someone who knows she's walking on ice, but chooses not to flinch. She kneels. Her voice is barely above a whisper. I did, Your Majesty, but I only wove what was ordered. The Emperor's expression doesn't change. And who ordered it? Now the silence grows unbearable. The Empress's fan trembles in her hand. She speaks, slowly, evenly, saying she merely asked for beauty to match the heavens, nothing more. But her words hang too neatly in the air, too rehearsed. The Emperor's gaze shifts between them. For a moment, you could swear the very tapestries are listening. In the following days, the court becomes a spiderweb. Messengers dart between chambers, scrolls vanish, and every pair of eyes carries a secret. You pass through gardens where the wind whispers like frightened servants. Somewhere near the lotus pond, two eunuchs mutter about a message stitched in gold, meant for the wrong prince. Another day, you overhear a general's aide say, "If that thread came from Shu province, it means rebellion's been in the cloth all along." The paranoia grows like mold in damp corners. Even at night, the palace refuses to sleep. Lanterns flicker behind closed doors. Footsteps echo. Silk rustles where it shouldn't. You find yourself tracing corridors that twist back upon themselves, wondering how something as fragile as fabric could tear through steel-thick loyalty. And through it all, the Empress grows quieter. She stops wearing color. She dismisses her attendants one by one until only a few remain. The dress sits untouched in a sealed chest, yet it might as well be alive, whispering from its confinement. Then comes the day you stumble upon something you weren't meant to see. Near the tailor's courtyard, the girl who wove the dress sits by a window, holding a single golden thread between her fingers. She's burning it slowly with the tip of an incense stick. The air smells of sweetness and ash. You ask softly, "Why destroy it?" She glances up, and her expression holds the weight of 10 unspoken truths. "Because even one thread," she murmurs, "can unravel an empire if someone believes it will." That night, a scroll is delivered to the emperor. No one sees who brings it. Some say it came from the southern provinces. Others claim it appeared on his desk as if by magic. Whatever the truth, by dawn the guards are doubled at every gate, and the empress's private quarters are locked. In the shadows beyond the throne room, the weaver girl kneels again, this time in chains of silk, not iron. Her lips move in prayer. Whether for mercy or justice, you can't tell. Historians still debate who first accused whom, whether the empress truly conspired with rebels or was merely a victim of palace paranoia. Some records say she ordered the girl executed. Others suggest the emperor spared her but banished her to weave for eternity in a remote temple. But deep down, you sense this wasn't just politics. It was about power wrapped in beauty. A warning that silk, no matter how soft, can cut sharper than steel when stitched with fear. By now the palace breathes suspicion. Every corridor hums with quiet dread. Every servant carries 2 faces, one for the emperor and one for survival. The silk dress, that shimmering masterpiece of gold and crimson, has vanished. It disappeared sometime between midnight and dawn, slipping from the sealed chest in the empress's quarters like a ghost shedding its body. You stand in the Hall of Women's Virtue, watching a squad of eunuchs overturn cushions, unroll rugs, even slice open scroll paintings in search of it. A few brave ones whisper that the dress might have been cursed, that anyone who touched it carried the scent of ruin. One older servant murmurs, "It never belonged to this world, that silk. It came from the realm of spirits." You almost laugh, but stop when you see how pale she is. The empress herself hasn't emerged from her chambers. The guards outside her door have been replaced twice already. You overhear an official muttering that her silence speaks louder than confession. Others claim she's been struck with grief so deep she cannot speak. Historians still argue whether she was under house arrest or quietly dethroned in all but name. Meanwhile, the emperor's court is unraveling. Without the dress to display or destroy, the evidence, if there ever was any, has turned to myth. Ministers accuse one another of hiding it, or worse, using its disappearance to cover their own treacheries. You trail behind a group of them as they pace through the imperial garden, voices sharp like snapping twigs. One says if the gown was stolen, it must have been burned. Another replies, or smuggled out to send a message. A third adds softly, maybe it walked away on its own. The last line makes everyone laugh nervously, but their eyes dart toward the bronze mirrors reflecting the pond. Even now, the reflection of a red silk shimmer seems to hover just beyond sight. In the evenings, the emperor sits in silence before the dragon throne, his hands clasped, staring at the empty display stand where the gown once hung. He doesn't speak of it, but the courtiers can feel the question burning in his mind. Was it ever just a dress? One night, thunder shakes the palace. Rain lashes against the glazed roof tiles. You take shelter under the covered walkway near the tailor's hall. That's when you see her, the weaver girl. She's drenched, her hair clinging to her face, her eyes dark with something that isn't fear anymore. She's carrying a small bundle wrapped in plain hemp cloth. Before you can speak, she kneels beside a brazier used for burning old fabrics. The guards haven't noticed her yet. She unwraps the bundle, and there it is. A small piece of golden silk. Not the whole gown, but unmistakably part of it. The hem. The bottom edge where the dragon motif once curved upward. She whispers something, too quiet to catch, then drops it into the fire. The silk doesn't curl or blacken. Instead, it gleams white-hot for a moment, like sunlight trapped underwater, before vanishing. You can't help but ask, was that the last of it? She looks up, rain streaking her face, and smiles faintly. No, silk remembers. Even ashes remember. By dawn, she's gone. The brazier is cold, and rumors start to slither through the palace like smoke. The emperor is ill. The empress refuses food. The stars above the forbidden city flicker red for 3 nights straight. Modern historians still debate whether these signs were recorded events or later embellishments. Some believe the dress symbolized political corruption. Others say it was simply a scapegoat for a collapsing court. But deep in your bones, you sense the truth is stranger, that the gown had become a mirror, showing each person what they feared most. Weeks pass, and the search for the missing silk turns desperate. The emperor orders inventories of every garment in the imperial wardrobe, every roll of fabric in the state warehouse. A poor tailor is accused of theft, tortured for days, and then released when no evidence appears. A eunuch is found drowned in the lotus pond, holding a scrap of pale thread between his fingers. It isn't gold, just yellowed linen, but the story spreads anyway. By late autumn, the dynasty itself seems to be fraying. Harvests fail. Trade routes falter. The people whisper that heaven has turned its face away. You can almost feel the empire loosening at its seams, like an old robe tearing under its own weight. In a last, desperate act, the emperor summons the court historians and demands the official record of the dress be erased. No one, he says, voice cracking, will remember a lie. But memory isn't so obedient. You step through the palace one final time before winter. The halls are quieter now, the golden dragons on the walls dim with dust. Somewhere far off you hear the faint whir of a loom, a rhythm steady, patient, eternal, and in that soft sound you could swear you hear the whisper of silk again, pulling at history's threads one by one. The first frost settles over the rooftops of the forbidden city, turning its crimson tiles a dull shade of silver. You walk through the courtyard and the air feels like a held breath, cold, thin, and waiting. Word has spread that the weaver, the girl who vanished weeks ago, has been found, or rather, that she returned. You follow the soft murmur of guards leading you toward a small, half-forgotten pavilion near the northern wall. It's the kind of place no one visits unless they have something to hide. Inside, the girl kneels before a newly set-up loom. The sound of the shuttle sliding back and forth echoes softly, hypnotically. Her wrists are bound in thin silk cords, but she doesn't seem to notice. She's weaving. Calmly. The emperor stands nearby, wrapped in a fur-lined robe, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. The empress sits a few steps behind him, veiled in white, her hands clasped so tightly you can see her knuckles through the gauze. Between them lies a single folded cloth, pale gold, smooth as water under light. It's not the vanished gown. It's something new. The emperor gestures. The girl stops weaving and turns her gaze toward him. Her face is serene, but her voice, barely a whisper, slices through the cold air. "You wanted beauty that could last forever," she says. "But beauty and peace cannot share the same thread." He frowns. "You speak of riddles." She tilts her head, the corners of her lips twitching into something like pity. "No, Majesty. I speak of silk. You glance at the new cloth on the ground. It shimmers strangely, like liquid sunlight. Yet when you look too long, the surface seems to ripple, as if something beneath it is alive." The emperor steps closer. "What have you woven?" She answers, "A reflection of truth." Historians still argue whether this exchange ever happened or was an invention of later chroniclers, but the story remains. that when the emperor unfolded that cloth, he saw not a design of dragons or clouds, but his own face, distorted and warped, wreathed in threads of blood-red light. Some accounts say he stumbled backward. Others claim he laughed, as if recognizing himself for the first time. Either way, by morning, the loom was gone again. Only the weaver remained, silent, eyes closed as though she had simply fallen asleep mid-breath. No marks, no wounds, just peace. A peace that unsettled everyone who saw her. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said she was a spirit sent by heaven to expose corruption. Others swore she was a southern spy who used silk as code to ignite rebellion. And some whispered a softer story, that she was once the Empress's sister, long hidden, her artistry the only way she could speak to the throne. You wander through the echoing corridors later that night, thinking about those theories. The moonlight turns the marble floor to pale silver, and you almost expect to see a golden thread snaking ahead of you, leading somewhere unseen. As the dynasty begins to fracture, rebellions in the west, tax riots in the south, the story of the silk dress becomes something else entirely. It's no longer about fabric or fashion. It's about the way beauty can seduce power, how one woman's art could reveal the fragility of an empire's heart. In the centuries that followed, poets wrote of her as the weaver who saw the future. Monks in distant monasteries spoke of her as a saint of patience and suffering. Some scholars claim her loom was preserved in secret, its threads made from the cocoons of a mythical golden silkworm. Even now, historians still debate whether she was real or allegorical, a moral tale stitched into history like embroidery meant to warn future rulers. But in that frozen pavilion, standing beside her still body, you feel the truth humming quietly in the air. It doesn't matter whether she was real. What matters is what she wove into memory. The Empress, they say, ordered all her gowns destroyed. For the rest of her life she wore plain white silk, unadorned, unembroidered. When asked why, she would say softly, "Color lies." And the Emperor? He lasted only 2 winters more. Some say he died peacefully in his sleep. Others whisper he wandered his chambers that final night, tracing invisible patterns in the air, muttering, "Threads, all threads." You leave the palace behind, stepping through the north gate at dawn. Snow drifts down gently, catching in your hair like stray silk fibers. The city beyond is waking, unaware that within those walls, beauty just toppled a dynasty. As you glance back one last time, a glint of gold flashes from a distant window, gone as soon as you blink. Maybe sunlight, maybe memory, maybe the last echo of a weaver who dared to turn silk into truth. Centuries drift by like dust on old silk. You open your eyes, and the Forbidden City is no longer alive with drums or whispers. It's a museum now, all glass panels and guide ropes. Tourists shuffle past the exhibits, their phones glowing brighter than the lacquered walls. Somewhere deep in this maze of marble and shadow, an archaeologist bends over a sealed case. Inside lies a folded fragment of gold-threaded fabric, delicate, brittle, glimmering faintly under the sterile light. You lean closer. Even after hundreds of years, it still breathes a quiet defiance. The tag reads, "Silk Fragment, Late Ming Dynasty. Possible ceremonial garment. Origin disputed." Historians still argue whether this is the same silk dress that once set an empire trembling. Some say it's a forgery created by early collectors. Others insist the weave pattern matches one mentioned in imperial ledgers. A few even claim microscopic analysis revealed traces of crushed pearl and rare dyes that no longer exist in modern China. You can almost imagine the weaver's hands moving again, swift, steady, unyielding. trapping a dynasty's heartbeat inside every thread. Nearby, a curator speaks softly to a small group. Legend says the pattern in the silk changes depending on who looks at it. Some see dragons, some see words, some see their own reflection. You smile to yourself because that, you realize, is the real power of the story. The silk didn't just change a dynasty, it reflected it. It showed the rot beneath the gold, the vanity behind virtue, the fragility beneath all that order. The lights dim automatically as the museum closes. You linger, your breath fogging the glass case. For a moment, you think you see movement, the faint shimmer of a thread unfurling, like the dress remembering itself. But then it's gone. The city outside hums with neon and traffic, but the silence inside feels timeless. Somewhere, beyond all this modern bustle, a single golden thread continues its quiet journey through history, connecting past to present like a whisper from the loom. And perhaps in that echo, the weaver is still at work, patiently stitching her truth into the fabric of memory, reminding anyone who will listen that beauty isn't harmless, and power is never as solid as it seems. Maybe that's why the fragment still shines. Because the story, the warning, refuses to fade. So as the museum lights fade and the world outside returns to its late-night rhythm, let your mind loosen from the weave of the story. The clatter of the city softens, replaced by the faint rustle of silk, the kind that sounds like distant rain on rooftops. You breathe out, slowly, and imagine your fingers brushing the ancient threads, cool and fragile, connecting you to hands long gone. The dynasty has fallen. The palace is dust, yet that tiny shimmer of gold survives, carrying centuries of silence within it. There's something comforting in that, isn't there? The thought that even beauty born of chaos can endure quietly, long after the noise fades. If you listen closely, maybe you can still hear the loom, the gentle clack of wood, the whisper of silk sliding through silk. It's a rhythm older than power, older than pride, just steady, soft, eternal. Let it lull you, like the heartbeat of history slowing to rest. The empress sleeps, the emperor fades, the weaver's truth remains, woven into time itself. You don't need to solve the mystery. You don't even need to decide what the dress meant. Just know that it existed once, shimmering in candlelight, daring to tell the truth no one wanted to see. Now, let that image dissolve, threads drifting apart, turning into soft darkness, into peace. And as the last strand of silk fades from view, let your breathing match its rhythm, in and out, slow, calm, weightless. Sweet dreams.